Good evening, and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Could we start off with the roll call, please?
Chair Chapman?
Here.
Commissioner Coombs?
Here.
Commissioner Elman?
Here.
Commissioner Feruzin?
Here.
Commissioner Hakopian?
Here.
Commissioner Liu?
Here.
Commissioner Turner? Thank you.
Thank you. For this evening, the next step we're going to do is the flag salute, and I'm wondering if Officer Fekete could help us out there. Please stand and place your hand on your heart.
Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. The public comment period will be upcoming in a few minutes. To speak during that period, please call area code 818-238-3335. That's 818-238-3335. City staff will answer the phones and announce the speakers in real time to the chair when the public comment period begins. And next is our commission's announcements and reporting out by commissions and subcommittees. Do any of our commissioners have anything to report this evening? Commissioner Hakobian.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Happy to be here. On January 24th, I was invited by Assemblymember Laura Friedman's office to a virtual discussion on the topic of street racing. I was joined by Commissioner Coombs, the group Together We Can, and Councilmember Nick Schultz. On January 28th, I had lunch with Police Chief Albanese. We had a great conversation about the priorities of the police department. I just want to thank the chief for making time for that conversation. On February 11th, I attended the Coffee with a Cop event at Ugly Mug Coffee. I ran into Commissioner Elman there. It was well attended and met a lot of new faces in the community. And that's all I have to report.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioner Coombs.
Thank you, Chairman. So as Commissioner Hakobian just announced that we met with Assemblymember Laura Friedman to talk about street racing. I found a productive meeting. And I also saw that there's an upcoming invitation that all of us received to a future discussion. I believe it's next week. Also got a chance, and Commissioner Feruzin will probably talk more about this, but I got a chance to meet with her to explore pedestrian traffic data and to possibly look into tying those interests in with Together We Can and some of the street racing initiatives and street safety initiatives that are going on. This is an announcement for a future event. This coming Tuesday, February 22nd, Commissioner Hakobian and I are going to be participating in the homeless count in Burbank. They are still open to accepting volunteers for that. They're looking for teams of 2 or 3. The training is online, and so it's all virtual. There's no contact. If folks are interested in that, they can ask me about that later on as well.
Commissioner Feruzin.
Thank you. As Vice Chair Coombs mentioned, I met as an ad hoc committee with him, and also communicated with Commissioner Liu, given her data expertise around specifically pedestrian traffic safety and data around that. And I know that I've heard the concern in the community, whether that's from people directly on online, Facebook, for example, groups where folks are saying they had close calls, maybe crossing the street themselves, or they're concerned, with their, walking with their kids. Even folks who have reported that their child has been victim of a hit and run while maybe walking home from school by themselves, things like that are very concerning. I know that, of course, Together We Can is making great strides on traffic safety. I know City Council is also concerned about this and looking into Vision Zero and some other ideas around traffic, specifically pedestrian safety or bicyclists and things of that nature. And so, I know for myself as a mother with small kids, I don't let them cross the street by themselves, and I don't know when I would feel comfortable with that, just seeing some of the drivers that we see. So it's just something that, myself and the other commissioners were going to look into a little more. We'll be requesting maybe a little more information from the police department, and what we've received so far has already been very helpful. And, the goal will be to hopefully formulate some recommendations and then agendize that to have a conversation with the full commission and hopefully come to some kind of consensus on recommendations for council, specifically around pedestrian safety, as well as checking in again with Together We Can and other, community stakeholders as we're doing that. So I just wanted to share that update.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to oral communications. And our speakers that call in have 3 minutes to speak. Do we have any callers? Excellent.
You're on live with the Police Commission. Go ahead with your comment.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Go
Wonderful.
ahead.
Good evening, Police Commissioners, Chief, and staff. My name is Pamela Takahashi. I am the Vice President of the Magnolia Park Merchants Association and a 23-year resident of Burbank. I also live in Magnolia Park. I'm calling in tonight to thank you for agendizing the topic tonight regarding commercial break-ins. The Mag Park Shopping and Business District is regularly hit, and we appreciate attention being put on this issue. The Mag Park Merchant Association also had a visit a couple months ago by BPD's Lieutenant Puglisi and Detective Terrell. It was an informative dialogue and reassuring. We shared the recording with the Magnolia Park merchants, and it was well received. We would also like to thank Chief Albanese for helping our merchants who have currently been facing an issue of destructive and aggressive folks coming in and out of the stores. We want to make sure our entire neighborhood and shopping district is safe for merchants and customers alike. We welcome BPD to visit the Magnolia Park Merchants Association meetings at any time with updates to keep our merchants informed and supported. I'm looking forward to the presentation, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other callers? No. All right, then we will move on. Do any of the commissioners have any response to the public comments? The commission cannot act on items raised during the public cannot act on items raised during public comment, but may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer them to staff. Do we have any comments there?
Just for requesting clarification, if I may.
Commissioner Coombs?
Great, thank you. I caught that the Magnolia Park Merchants Association meeting, it takes place monthly. I didn't catch when that meeting takes place.
Commissioner, we need to find that out and get back to you on that one. That's the Magnolia Park. Good. Are there any other comments? Well, we keep moving along here. The next step is our approval of the minutes from the January 19th, 2022. I hope everyone has read the minutes, reviewed them, and is ready to vote on them. Has There any questions there? Commissioner Coombs?
Sorry, not a question as much as a comment, and it won't be in the way of whether it won't get in the way of approving the minutes. For the agenda item for tonight from the minutes, we had inadvertently dropped community crime and was focusing on retail crime. So I will be later on in the meeting making a motion to add a discussion of community crime and community crime prevention strategies for a future meeting. For more clarification, residential crime. Residential.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Elliman?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. And do we have
Second.
Commissioner Coombs seconds? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we've got the minutes approved unanimously. Our next item of business is now the presentation and discussion on statistics of recent retail crimes and crime deterrence strategies for businesses in the city. And this is going to be presented by Lieutenant Claudio Lusaco. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, Police Commissioner. Claudio Lusaco, I'm the lieutenant overseeing the Investigations Division, which includes the property detail and investigators. Like was mentioned by Commissioner Coombs, who made the motion at the last meeting, we are going to be discussing retail theft and related criminal activity. And I'd be more than happy to come back and discuss the residential criminal activity at a future meeting if that's so agendized. We're going to talk about the retail theft, commercial burglaries, a couple different types of robberies, smash and grabs. We'll talk about some statistics. What does the Burbank Police Department do to curtail these crimes? And how can business owners help to prevent the crimes from happening, both when their businesses are open and when they're closed? I'd like to point out that the public oftentimes uses some of these terms interchangeably. Sometimes you'll hear someone say that their store got robbed, and in fact, what the police department would term that is a burglary if nobody was inside and nobody was actually physically assaulted or property taken from them. So oftentimes these terms are used interchangeably by the public, but each one actually has a very specific legal meaning. Within each of these, oftentimes there are subcategories as well. So within a robbery, there could be a different, an Estes type robbery, which we'll talk about. The first one we're going to talk about is retail theft, also known commonly as shoplifting. Generally, a person will walk into a store and they will lift some property, either conceal it on their person or in a bag, or sometimes just openly walk out with it. Sometimes in the recent past on the news or in the media, you'll see individuals just pack some stuff up in their hands and they'll walk out. That's generally going to be a misdemeanor if it's under $950 of value. If it's over $950, it can be charged as a felony. However, most oftentimes it's charged as a misdemeanor unless the dollar value is extremely high. Commercial burglary. It's when an individual enters a property or a business with the intent to commit a theft or another felony crime. So it could be with the intent to commit a theft under $950, any kind of theft, or some type of felony crime. You'll have a commercial burglary. And this can be filed as a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on the circumstances. We have robbery, which is probably one of the more serious ones, or is the most serious one. It's when somebody takes possession of someone's property from their person and uses force or fear in taking that property. That can be accomplished with or without a weapon. If force or fear is used, it is termed a robbery. If the person does not know that the property was taken from them. So sometimes you'll have like a purse snatch or someone holding an object, maybe loosely, and a suspect will take that from them, and they don't know that it was taken. They obviously had no force or fear involved, and that would be a grand theft person, which is a different crime and not as serious. Robbery is always, if filed, is filed as a felony. Estes robberies are when, generally speaking, when someone lifts merchandise from a store, and generally a loss prevention officer or other employee will confront that individual as they're leaving or after they've left the store, and some sort of struggle ensues, or the person uses force or fear to take that property. So that property actually belongs to the store, but the loss prevention officer or the employee is acting on behalf of the store and is losing that property, and that is also a robbery, and it's termed an Estes robbery, named after a case back several years ago in which the individual was held responsible for a robbery. His name was Estes, and that's why it's referred to as an Estes. So you'll hear a robbery happen at a store where it's not a takeover type robbery, it's just someone taking property. We take those very seriously because oftentimes somebody is going to get hurt in the process. We hear the term smash and grab quite a bit. The smash and grab is not a legal term. It's a term that we use in society. It's a term we hear on the news or on social media. It generally refers to a crime where someone's broken a window or some sort of container and quickly grabbed the belongings and fled the scene. And that's the smash and grab. Again, not a legal term, but something that you'll often hear people talking about. We'll transition to some statistics. I'll have stats here on all of these crimes we just talked about for you, and we'll have the stats from 2019, 2020, and 2021. As you can see, in 2019, we had a little over 600 retail thefts. Those are shoplifts, and 293 arrests. And then you can see the stats in 2020 and 2021. The dark gray bars are the actual crimes reported, and the light gray is the arrests. What I'd like to point out about retail theft or shoplifting is it's highly variable, dependent upon what the stores want to enforce and what the stores want to call the police about. So if you have a store that is very active in loss prevention, has dedicated loss prevention officers, you will see that store have a lot of arrests, a lot of police calls for service, where we will go and take those, generally what's a citizen's arrest, from the store loss prevention, and there'll be a lot of calls for service there. There'll be other stores where they take a more hands-off approach, and we may get no calls there or very few calls, and it's all up and down and variable depending on how the store wants to react. And sometimes we'll go there and there's communication as to what the store's intention is on those cases. So it's highly variable. It's totally dependent on what the stores want to do. Very rarely are police officers walking upon a shoplift that's happening. Commercial burglaries, like we talked about, are generally going to be those burglaries where you have a closed business. It's not a shoplift. Somebody has broken into the business. Also included in these commercial burglaries are storage containers or lockers at gyms where you store your clothing while you're going working out. You come back and you find your property missing. Those are commercial burglaries. So these are the stats. Last year on commercial burglaries, we had 161, and 25 of those were cleared by arrest. And again, you can see the color codes there, just like on the last slide. This slide here breaks out the gym and storage locker burglaries for you. For 2019, 2020, 2021. As you can see, there was an uptick in those. We see a lot of those, like I said, at gyms and storage lockers. That's primarily what drives those numbers. These are the robbery statistics, 30, 19, and 24 for the last 3 years. As you've seen, in society in general, the stats for robberies have gone up. It's not only here in Burbank. That seems to be a case in the state, in the county, across the country. These are the Estes robberies. These are generally started at stores where somebody's confronted after shoplifting. So what does Burbank PD do to help curtail these crimes? Uniform patrol of business districts. We are expecting our patrol officers to maintain visibility, be out on the street, make sure people are seeing them, both the business owners and any potential crooks that want to break into these locations. We have no way of knowing how many crimes we prevent just by being out and about and people seeing us. We proactive enforcement of suspicious behavior. So if the officers working patrol see something that does not look right, our expectation is that they take some sort of action. We also heavily rely on the public to report any suspicious activity. Here in Burbank, we're very fortunate. The public is very supportive, and we get a lot of calls of suspicious activity, and we are very lucky that we have the resources to respond to those calls and deal with them appropriately. Interaction with the business community. I heard the caller make a comment about the Magnolia Merchants Association meeting. I have it highlighted here on the slide where Lieutenant Puglisi and Detective Terrell went out and spoke with them, and we're more than happy to do that for them again and any other community organizations in town that would like us to do a similar presentation. We're more than happy to do that to help them understand what we do, how we can do it, and what they can do to help themselves. And finally, is when the crimes do happen, we doggedly investigate the cases. If there's any leads whatsoever, we are going to dedicate resources to that, and we are going to do the best we can to solve them and arrest the folks responsible and hold them accountable. What can business owners do? We're going to talk about what business owners can do when the shop is open and when their shop is closed. For open businesses, generally hardening the target, and also for closed businesses, certainly. Surveillance cameras with monitors. Let the folks know that not only you have surveillance cameras, but you are watching them, so you can have monitors so they know you can see them. Don't stack product which obstructs their views, so you want to make sure that everyone can see inside, you can see through, across, and about your store. Install mirrors. You can strategically place those mirrors in places so you can see all through your store. Locking up high-value product. If you have something of high value, the suggestion is that you lock that up and make the customer ask you to look at it. And a real big one, I think, is greeting every patron, making eye contact with them, and asking them if they need assistance. Help them out. And that way, you've engaged them. They know you've seen them. They've seen you. And if they do decide that they're going to commit a crime, there's no doubt in their mind that you've made eye contact with them and you know who they are. For closed businesses, roll-up gates are good, bars are good, tempered glass is good. You got to be mindful that, aesthetics are important for businesses. So you put up bars and roll-up gates. A lot of folks are not interested in that because it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. It's tough to look at. Tempered glass, very expensive, but it's an option. Functional lighting, alarm systems, surveillance cameras. We have found that live stream alerts with the cameras, so don't go necessarily through a service provider, but if you get live alerts on your phone, you can call our dispatch center and give them live updates on what's happening, and we can get there a lot faster if there's people inside your business. Communicate with your neighbors, speak with your neighboring businesses, talk to them. If you see something about the business next door that doesn't look right, please call them, please call us. Make sure, this one's really seems simple, make sure your building is secure at closing. I can't tell you how many times our officers go to businesses and doors are left open. It's a real simple one. You need to make sure you lock up. Keep your property manicured. If it looks like somebody's there, if it looks like you care about your business, the business adjoining, it's a less chance it's going to be targeted. And then obviously if you see something suspicious, you need to call us. Here in Burbank, we're more than happy to come out. It's never a problem. And generally speaking, we're going to be there within a few minutes, depending on what the type of call is. And with that, that's my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions any of the commissioners may have.
Great, thank you, Lieutenant. Do any of our commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Hakobian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman, and thank you so much for that presentation. In regards to the commercial burglary slide, I'm sure the community would want to know, are there any business locations that are being targeted more than other locations?
I don't know that any businesses are being targeted than any other one. Clearly, it's crime, generally crimes of opportunity. So you'll have folks that'll see something and they'll go and they will want to break into it. Other times we have crews of crooks that come into town that are specifically targeting types of businesses for whatever reason. So there will be, they're going to target a pizza place or a restaurant that serves a certain type of food. And it seems, we'll talk to our neighboring agencies, which is really important for us, and we'll find that a crew has done, numerous pizza locations for whatever reason. Not necessarily one brand, but that's where they're targeting. But we haven't necessarily seen a trend of any specific businesses being targeted.
Thank you so much.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Liu?
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation.
Sure.
Was interesting seeing the charts on kind of the different types of robberies and theft over time, especially when it comes to robberies. Clearly, there has been an increase in trend of actual robberies. It also seems like in 2020, the share of arrests was lower than in 2021 and also 2019. Can you speak to just some of the underlying reasons for, I don't know if it's like the effectiveness of reporting or of monitoring of potential robberies, but is there anything kind of underlying the ability to be more successful with the arrests in these robberies specifically?
We're making arrests and working leads. So to make the arrests, we need to work the leads that come to us. So it's a matter of what information we have from either the victim, witnesses, video, forensic evidence that we might collect. So if we have any sort of evidence that gives us a lead, for instance, if there's a video and we get a license plate, that's a significant lead for us. License plates are extremely important, and we can work that lead. If we get forensically a fingerprint or DNA, those are fantastic leads that we can work. If there's no leads, if we don't have any information to work with, it becomes difficult to solve the cases to clear them with an arrest.
See, and so I think, would it be fair to say, like in 2020, because it was kind of a particular year, if you will, in terms of how the world is operating, that just kind of led to naturally fewer leads and ability to chase, follow them?
It's real difficult to say. I mean, clearly with the pandemic, there was everything in our society changed, and no matter what topic you're talking about, you could point towards some sort of change because of COVID. Whether that affected the amount or number of arrests and the types of leads that we were able to work, I really can't say.
Got it. I have one more question, if that's all right. I saw throughout the presentation just kind of this focus on, reporting something suspicious, leaning on the public to do so. Would you mind kind of talking through, what should actually be considered quote unquote suspicious activity versus what may not, like what is actually an effective reporting, and what results in successful reports of activity versus other instances when maybe it isn't as successful, if you will.
Well, nobody knows your area, your business, your home, your workplace better than you do. There's no chance that we're going to know that better than you do. So your business, your neighbor's business, the area in which you are always at. What's normal. So if you see something that's out of the norm, our suggestion is always to call us and let us. And if in the meantime you decide, that was normal. That's the neighbor's kid. That's not a problem. Call us back and you can cancel our response. But if you call us, we're going to put the call in the queue. And depending on how severe it sounds to the dispatchers, who do a fabulous job, vetting the calls when they come in and asking the appropriate questions and getting the answers. They will send patrol officers, and it's no problem for us to respond to these calls. Generally, those suspicious type calls in business districts, we'll send 2 police officers. If they decide they need more, they'll ask for more. If the dispatcher sense that they need more officers, they'll send them, and we can always scale that back. So, and if there's something really important going on or dangerous and we can't get there, the dispatcher will share that with the caller. And oftentimes we'll get more than one call on the same suspicious behavior, which increases the likelihood that it is suspicious. And our mantra is always to call us and err on the side of calling us. And we'll get out there. We're here anyway. We're more than happy to call and help you keep your business area safe.
Thank you.
Commissioner Feruzin?
First, I just want to say thank you again for coming to speak with us and sharing all this information, since it is such a concern for many in our community, not just the business owners, but the residents like myself that patronize them too. So I do have a question, just in terms of the kind of reasons behind these crimes or the cause, right? So these are a little bit of a symptom. So I'm wondering about the causes. Understanding that may vary between, say, a robbery versus a burglary, or say a smash and grab versus something else, right? But are you able to share if there are any sort of underlying causes or themes that you all have noticed, or characteristics in common that folks have? And really, I shouldn't even say characteristics that folks have. I'm thinking more like are certain types of crimes related more to, folks who unfortunately have substance use issues, and there's, a financial incentive for that reason, versus others who maybe it's just a more strictly financial motivation, or, speaking to the issue of, targeting specific businesses, if there's some sort of more personal motivation. I'm just wondering if you could speak to a little bit of those questions at all.
Well, it's real difficult. You're going to be making some real serious generalizations, in answering that question. But very commonly, shoplifting, at the lower end of the shoplifting scale, you'll have commonly, drug users who are trying to fund their habit. On the higher end, on the commercial burglaries, where we'll see higher end equipment, people have plans. It's groups of people, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6. They have multiple vehicles. They're communicating, and they're targeting something with high-end value, $50,000, $60,000 or more of some type of equipment. You have a more sophistication, and the driver may be a little bit different than that, than just someone that's trying to steal $100 worth of goods from a store. But we're seeing a lot of repeat offenders. So the individuals that we're arresting commonly have been arrested very recently, sometimes within days or weeks. On the higher end, it's not necessarily repeat so often, but very commonly they do have a criminal history.
And just a follow-up question, just in terms of again, speaking to the arrests and clearing these crimes, I'm just wondering, are there, certain types that have, strategies that the department's been more successful in arresting and following, and that may be because certain types of crimes are likely to have leads versus others don't, but I'm just wondering, are there some of these crimes that they're harder to solve or pursue than others?
Again, it's extremely variable on the type of information and evidence that we're able to collect. Do we have one witness? Do we have multiple witnesses? Do we have video? And the forensic evidence is always really important. So is it somebody that they recognize? Is there a license plate? Stuff like that. That's the driver in solving all these cases and putting the work into them that's required. These cases oftentimes, especially the more serious ones, we put a lot of time and effort into solving them, and they take a lot of time. They take a lot of networking with other agencies, because commonly these suspects will go to multiple jurisdictions. They're not only going to be in Burbank. We've had recent cases as far south as San Diego and as far north as the Bay Area, Las Vegas, Arizona. You may have seen a recent press release this week. We had some crooks out from Texas. So they're from all parts. And again, the big deal is how much information we have that allows us to work the cases.
Thank you.
Commissioner Elman?
Thank you very much. Thanks again for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Just a few questions. Under the different headings that you gave, what is walking out of a restaurant without paying considered?
So that's a specific crime of defrauding an innkeeper. It's 537 of the Penal Code. It's a form of theft. It'd be the same as not paying your cab fare. So if you go in and eat your food and refuse to pay your bill, it's a form of theft and treated as such by the courts.
Thank you. My next question is, any of those headings cover also use of a stolen credit card?
Generally not. That's going to be a separate crime, identity theft type crime, generally in the 530.5 section of the Penal Code. But you could have someone that enters a store with the intent to commit those thefts, and depending on the value of the theft they intend to commit, you could have a burglary. And sometimes sometimes those do cross over.
My last question is this. Looking at your presentation for the year 2020, there was quite a bit of storage crime. But as you mentioned, a lot of it is theft from gym lockers, but all the gyms were closed in 2020.
Yes, that's true. A lot of the gyms were closed for a portion of the year. Those also include storage lockers. So if oftentimes you're moving residences, you will store your goods in one of those storage places that have garage door type storage space. And those are the ones that we're talking about. We're talking about storage lockers, or you can get those containers that have locks on them. Those are the storage lockers, and those are considered commercial burglaries.
And I have one more question, I guess. I see on the street those temporary storage things, the pods.
Correct.
Is there any issue with those being broken into?
We have come across reports of those being broken into, yes.
Would that be considered a commercial crime?
Yes, that's a commercial burglary.
Commissioner Coombs?
Thank you. Lieutenant Lusacco, thank you again for the presentation. I appreciate that. And I had a few questions to start, and now I've got more questions, so hopefully you'll be able to humor me with this. First off, I just want to acknowledge a lot of what you're talking about is response to crime, not crime prevention. So I just wanted to lift up that there's a lot of work that needs to go in, that the community needs to put in to try to do what we can collectively for crime prevention in the first place. But I appreciate you were talking about your ability to have units to be able to respond as needed depending on the circumstances. So I really appreciate your response. Just want to lift up that it's really hard for you to stop crime though, because you're responding to crime. Just wanted to point that out. Couple of questions for you. One of them was, I was curious, is for the, I think it's the robberies. How many robberies involve weapons, and how many robberies involve the stealing of weapons?
I don't have the stats for how many robberies that we had actually involved weapons, but it is very common that you will have someone that uses a knife or a gun in a robbery. The carjackings, which are a form of robbery, are also included in those numbers. And when you have a carjacking, very commonly that is usually with a gun being involved in the crime. Your second question, how many robberies involve the stealing of a firearm from somebody?
Yeah, where weapons are taken in the robbery itself.
Very rarely in a robbery, and we're talking about, again, a robbery. I want to make sure we're using these terms correctly. On a robbery, we're talking about being taken generally from a person themselves. So you have some sort of altercation.
Yeah.
You have some sort of altercation, and someone uses force or fear, and they take a weapon from somebody. That's extremely rare. I can't think of an incident offhand. If you're talking about burglaries where firearms are stolen, that does happen, where someone will break into a location or commonly a home and a firearm will be stolen. But generally, unless there are people home and there is a altercation with the resident, that's not going to be considered a robbery. It's going to be considered a residential burglary.
Appreciate that. I appreciate you helping me kind of with the terms as you started out the presentation like that. Switching gears a little bit, one of the things that I hear about often is it's important for both businesses and residents to to have cameras out or have some way to record. I've got a couple questions about that. How often do you run into cameras that are put up just for show, but they don't actually work, so you can't get access to any meaningful, useful information?
What we run into commonly is not ones that are put up for show. They put them up with a purpose, but they're not working for whatever reason. Either the batteries don't work, or the connection has gone bad, or commonly the software that the merchant or homeowner is using is corrupted somehow, and we can't lift the video from the software or from the hard drive. So that happens quite a bit. So in my presentation, you saw working, functional cameras and recording systems are extremely important. And for an investigator, having video of a crime either happening or something nearby, you may solve a crime that happened nearby by having a video camera on your storefront, because the person may have walked by or driven by your store en route to a crime. So it's very important that your video is working. If you're going to have the system, it's extremely important for it to be working. Having it not working is, okay, maybe a deterrent to some people, but it doesn't help us if it's not working.
This tying into the cameras, this may change gears a little bit, is are there any legalities with business owners and business operators using cameras? Are there any concerns about recording information that they're not supposed to be recording? I work in healthcare, so I know that it's real tricky about where we place cameras and everything, but I'm realizing that in the community there may be concerns. Even heard stories about issues about cameras being used sometimes, and they may be recording something that they're not supposed to be recording. Does that come up at all in terms of helping people prepare their spaces or protect their spaces?
Well, generally speaking, if you're in a public area, an area where folks don't have an expectation of privacy, so if you're walking around an area in the store where anyone can be at the cash register, at the in the aisles, anything like that, there really is no expectation of privacy, certainly not from a private business owner and not even from the government. So there's no issues there. Where I can see where you could run into a problem might be or you will run into a problem is a dressing room, a bathroom. Those certainly, there are criminal acts where folks will set up cameras in those areas, but certainly you can set one up outside the bathroom, outside the changing rooms. Stores often will have theft where people go into the changing rooms and they leave without clothes because they're wearing the clothes that they just selected off the rack underneath their jacket. So that's important to do, but certainly you can't have the camera inside the dressing room. As far as medical type stuff goes, that's going to, you know yourself what you can and can't do when it's related to medical information and documents. You're probably not going to be wanting to videotape social security numbers and stuff like that, medical record numbers. But from a broad perspective, looking down, there's no issues.
Okay, really appreciate this. Really appreciate you taking the time
My
to help
pleasure.
us understand this a little bit better.
Commissioner Hakobian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman, and thank you, Lieutenant, again. And you provided a lot of information, and really appreciate that. And I was just wondering, because I'm a big fan of after the Police Commission meetings to share this information on social media with friends in the community. Is there any possibility to get like a presentation in PDF format for us to share out, if that's possible, and just to let people know what's going on?
Certainly, Ms. Nakamura has the copy, and I'll make sure she has a PDF copy and she can share it if, yep, she says she's shaking her head yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Elman?
Just one thing that I would like to bring up. That's the importance, if you do have a video system, it's good to have a cloud storage so that the recordings are off-site, because sometimes bad individuals will take the video recorder with them.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Yes, sir.
Lieutenant, I have a few questions. We have we've had a program for years, the Neighborhood Watch program. In your outreach to businesses in the community, you mentioned like the Magnolia Park. Are there a number of business groups in our community who you contact, or they contact you regularly? Is this something that there's a couple of meetings a month with businesses, or once every 6 months?
So pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, we did have meetings with the business owners that were interested in meeting with us. I previously worked in the Cops Bureau, and we were meeting with businesses regularly that wanted to meet with us. As far as groups go, not too often, but we're more than happy to do it. And now as we're getting back to regular business, I'm sure that we can carve out time to meet with any merchant associations that want to meet with us.
And during your presentations, do you go through, we had a program with outreach to religious churches, synagogues, temples, and things, and there was very specific information within a specific building in controlling some of the aspects of crime. Is that how they work with a business, or is it more of a presentation and you do what you want?
Generally,
businesses.
Sure. Generally, if we're working with clergy type folks, churches, synagogues, and such, our general idea is to meet with a group and give them the general information is what we've done in the past. And then if there's specific information to your location, we're more than happy to trip out to go to your location and meet with you and talk about specifics to that location. So we're more than happy to do that.
Do we have specific areas in the community where commercial crime is much higher than in other areas, and maybe reach out to them and see if you can develop a relationship with them to lower the crime?
Certainly. I'll speak to my peer, Lieutenant Derek Green, who happens to be here tonight. You're going to be hearing from him on a different topic, and I'll make sure that he knows that that's something that we need to get into. But absolutely, I think you're on point, and that's something that needs to get done.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to thank you for your presentation. I think that we've covered all the questions from the commissioners. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
We're going to move on now to a presentation and discussion of the results of the community survey that was conducted between October 18th and November the 22nd. And our Lieutenant Derek Green is going to give a presentation on that.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair
you, sir.
Chapman. Appreciate it. And good evening, Commissioners. Good to see you again. I'm Lieutenant Derek Green. I oversee now the Community Outreach and Personnel Services Bureau within the department. And I'm here tonight to provide you with a very brief summary of the results of our most recent community study. I have personally been involved with the last three studies. We've held these in 2017, 2019, and now 2021. And this particular study is unique in the sense that a lot has happened since our last study. And when I say a lot has happened, I mean, generally speaking, in the policing profession. A lot has changed, as we all know, from the global pandemic to several national events that have demanded police reform, required police agencies to self-reflect and examine their policies and procedures and the way they do business. And there was much needed change. And the Burbank Police Department was one of those agencies that took the time to examine the way we do business. And we took a look at our use of force policies and quite a few other things. And we made changes. And we, as we always do, adapt. I wanted to remind the public that since 2014, the Burbank Police Department has been recognized as an accredited agency by CALEA. And CALEA stands for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. And what this means is that the Burbank Police Department voluntarily pursued this accreditation by adhering to over 400 law enforcement standards. And when I say voluntarily, that's because we always strive to be the best that we can possibly be. We have processes in place for internal oversight, external oversight, so that we can remain on the leading edge of contemporary law enforcement and make sure that we are doing things correctly. So part of that accreditation requires us to hold these studies with the community every other year. But that's not the only reason that we do these studies. We do these because it is another channel for dialogue with the community, with the residents of our community, with the people who work in the community, business owners, merchants like you were mentioning earlier, and also those who visit the city. So this study is very important to us, and although a lot has occurred in the law enforcement profession since our last study, I am very proud to say that the department received very high marks, and there is very little fluctuation in our ratings from the last study up until now, despite all that has happened in our country in the past 2 years. So with that being said, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the results. The formal report will actually be released in the morning through all of our social media channels, website, and also the City of Burbank social media channels and website. That'll be a much more exhaustive report with all of the results, and tonight I'm just going to briefly provide the bullet points. So we'll get into that. So this is the wordiest slide, so we'll get through this first. Like I said, this is the first survey that we've held since 2019. Our study period was 5 weeks in length. It started on October 18th, 2021, and ran through November 22nd. The survey instrument was available entirely online, and it was accessible using a computer, a phone, or any other web or mobile-enabled device. The survey was embedded with what's referred to as IP restriction, and what this does is it basically just restricts multiple responses from the same device, and that just helps us improve the credibility and the validity of the results. The survey was offered in 3 different languages: English, Spanish, and Armenian. A total of 876 complete responses were received, with 216 partial responses, and a total of 2,412 visits. As far as the multi-language surveys, 1,090 responses were completed in English, 1 response was completed in Spanish, and 1 response was completed in Armenian. This is a brief overview of the demographics of the respondents. 55%, the majority, were female. The majority of respondents were between the ages of 25 to 49. And 91% were residents of Burbank. The options were either a resident, somebody who works in Burbank, or was visiting Burbank. So 91% identified themselves as residents. And the largest reporting zip code was 91505 at 31%. And the numbers with zip code reporting are pretty consistent with the layout of the city. You'll see that the larger zip codes obviously had the largest percentage of responses and so forth with the smaller zip codes. That's just a map to kind of give you a visualization. So the survey was also embedded with Skip Logic, and we wanted to ask respondents about their perceptions of our services, response times, how courteous the officers may have been, their professionalism, how helpful they were, fairness, and whether or not the officers, or any personnel for that matter, within the Burbank Police Department address our concerns. But in order to get that response, we wanted to make sure that the respondent had contact with the Burbank Police Department. So of the 1,092 responses that we received, only 509 actually identified themselves as having had contact with some member of the police department over the last 12 months. So these ratings here are on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the lowest score you could get, and 5 being the highest score you could get. And you can see that all 6 dimensions are in the 4+ range, which is a very good score. And these are all categories that are very important to us: response times, keeping our response times low. Obviously, we strive for excellence when it comes to courtesy and professionalism and helpfulness. We impart fairness in our daily patrol activities, and we certainly do our best to address the community's concerns. The next dimension focused on crime concerns, and we held it to just these 6 areas, and these are on the slide here placed in order of response. You can see that first and foremost, The most concerning crime was speeding and reckless driving at 57% rather, of responses. Following that, 17% were concerned with violent crimes, 13% burglaries, 8% theft crimes, 3% gang crimes, and 2% of driving under the influence. The next dimension focused on quality of life, and I should have prefaced this by saying this is not a scientific methodology. We are asking community members to provide us with their opinion and perception. So basically, we are asking for just their input. These are certainly not statistics that are based on any scientific data. Quality of life, the number one concern at 55% of responses was the unhoused population, followed by traffic congestion at 22%, graffiti gang activity at 8%, drug issues at 7%, loud music parties at 4%, trash 3%, and prostitution, I think that was like 0.5%, which we really don't see much of that in Burbank, which is a good thing. Moving on to safety. So safety, we basically asked the respondents, number one, how safe they feel in the city of Burbank. And then we asked them to compare their perception of safety now as it was 5 years ago. So the good news is that 78% claim to feel either very safe or safe in the city of Burbank, an overwhelming majority. And 48% said they feel as safe or safer today than they did 5 years ago. And 52% felt less safe today than they did 5 years ago. So in looking at 2019 as a very quick comparison, these numbers were flipped. And as we mentioned earlier, a lot has happened not only over the past 5 years, but certainly over the last 2 years. We've all noticed changes in not just our community here in Burbank, but everywhere. Legislative changes have challenged law enforcement in holding people accountable for their actions. So this is no surprise that there is a general feeling that is less safe. But again, the numbers are pretty close to what they were not only in 19, but also looking back to 17. And I should say that all three of these reports are available on our website under our professional accountability section, if anybody wants to go back and look at the previous years. We focused on the confidence of the public and their satisfaction in our services. An overwhelming majority, 71%, reported feeling very confident in the Burbank Police Department's ability to address and handle their needs. 70% reported feeling very satisfied or satisfied with the services we provide. These numbers were slightly lower than 2019. We had a comparable amount of responses. I think we actually had 11 more responses this time around than we did in 2019. But you can see there's a slight decline there in the numbers, but nonetheless still an overwhelming majority. Community outreach is obviously big for us. This is one of the main reasons we do these studies, because we need to seek the input from our community, especially from members that live and work in the community that we serve. As far as social media, which is obviously we've tried to expand our social media presence and our footprint on social media over this last several years. So we asked what channels citizens use to get information about the department and their familiarity with the different channels that we have. 75%, the overwhelming majority, was most familiar with our website. 48% relied on our Twitter feed for information. 46% relied on Facebook. 37% relied on Instagram. 35% Nextdoor. 17% utilized Nixle, which is more of an emergency alert system. And then 9% are familiar with our YouTube channel. So what's interesting about all of these channels is they all function differently and they all serve different purposes. And they all serve a different demographic. So, people, the older members of our community are much more comfortable using Facebook and Twitter, while the younger generation is much more fluent with Instagram. So we utilize these in different ways, which is why you see such a diverse breakdown of results here, especially when you compare these numbers to the statistics on the age range of who responded to the survey. As far as the community events, we had a long list of community events, and we were just asking people to let us know which they were familiar with, to know perhaps we need to spend more time advertising one over the other, or even expand some of these events if they appear to be very popular. They reported being most familiar with our National Night Out, which is a national campaign in August, and then Coffee with a Cop, which we have been holding much more often because it has been very popular with our community. And the Coffee with a Cop event, we've tried to rotate it not only in different areas of the city, but also different days of the week to try to reach a wider audience. So again, these questions and dimensions and results will be much more in-depth in the report that will be released to the public tomorrow morning. Our PIO, Sergeant Brent Feckety, will be distributing and publishing that tomorrow morning. So with that, I will open it up for questions from the commission.
Thank you, Lieutenant Green. That was a great presentation. Do we have some comments or questions from our commissioners? Commissioner Coombs.
Lieutenant Banker, thank you for this. I just want to make you made a comment about this, and I just want to reflect and affirm that self-reflection is always a good thing. And I just want to offer, I think this is something that the commission would be very interested in as the department engages in self-reflection. I think that's something that we could probably play a part in as well. I know that's the reason many of us became very motivated and interested to be here as well. So whatever we can do there is great. This is actually a comment for the commission that we may want to look into, is that it would probably be a good idea if all of us became more familiar with the CALEA accreditation markers. You made reference to those and everything, and you indicated that there were over 400 markers that the department has evaluated on. I know I personally am not familiar with what those markers are, and it might be a good idea for all of us to take a look at that to get more familiar.
Yes, absolutely. And I need to double check, but I know when I was the PIO, we actually uploaded a link that listed all of the standards that we are required to meet. But I will make sure that is still living on our website, and if not, we will get it published, and we can also get that out to the commission.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Feruzen.
Yes, thank you again for that presentation and all of that information, and look forward to seeing the fuller report out tomorrow. I just want to say, in spite of the low response numbers to the Spanish and Armenian language surveys, I want to reiterate that I'm thankful the department made that available this year, and I believe that was for the first time. And, we do have according to the Census American Community Survey, we have about 14,000 limited English speaking households in Burbank, and that is specifically those who speak Spanish and other European languages, which I imagine would be mostly made up of those speaking Armenian here in Burbank. And that represents about 35% of households in Burbank. Or of the limited English speaking households, I should say. And so I just hope that, over the next year or so and the planning for the next survey and just other outreach efforts, that the commission can work together with the department to kind of strategize on how to outreach to those specific, communities and households to just ensure that, we're reaching out to them and their needs are being met as well. So thank you.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for bringing that to our attention, because to be quite honest, when we were building the survey initially, it hadn't even crossed our mind. And lo and behold, when we contacted the company that we worked with to host a survey, it was very easy to implement the multi-language version. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for looking into it. And yeah, it was done very quickly, so it was great.
Commissioner Liu, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a couple. Thank you, Lieutenant Green, for walking through that. That was really interesting, and I've been personally very excited to see some of the outcomes of the survey. Quick question. I know that some of the slides you had kind of a 2019 comparison, and maybe this is something that might come in the report tomorrow. So just let me know if I'm jumping the gun a little bit too much. But what are some of the most prominent trends that you've seen over the surveys that you've conducted over time? Just curious in terms of, there's a bunch of dimensions that were tested: quality of life, safety. Has there been just changes over time that you've seen, and how has kind of BPD reacted to that and integrated that into how they operate and think about the community?
Well, we have used the same format the last 3 studies we've done, and there was purpose behind that so that we can look back and compare the dimensions on how they were rated 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago compared to today. There haven't been many surprises, to be quite honest. Everything has stayed pretty consistent, which is a good thing. I did notice off just glancing at some of the results from 17 and 19 that the concern over the unhoused population has certainly increased, and I think that anybody living in Los Angeles County, whether it's Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, or wherever, is going to say that there is an obvious increase in the unhoused population. And the Burbank Police Department is working very diligently with our mental health evaluation team, as well as the Department of Mental Health, to provide sustained care and resources to these individuals in Burbank, which is why we here are keeping a lid on things for the most part. And when there is an issue, we address it immediately. So that was certainly stood out, that the unhoused population, the concern, has increased significantly, especially dating back to 2017. The other issue that has remained at the top of the list is the speeding and reckless driving. And you'll see in the Chief Albanese has some opening remarks in tomorrow's report, and he addresses the unfortunate tragedy that we had back in August in the city of Burbank, where we lost the lives of 3 individuals. And traffic safety on our roadways is paramount. It always has been. Whether or not there are fatalities, it is a priority for our police department, and it just as much has always been a priority for the residents of our community. Speeding, racing, erratic driving behaviors, it's always been prevalent, and that is something that we are continuing to work towards rectifying here in the city. There are so many dimensions that we could throw into this study and get feedback on, but what you will learn, and anybody that's been involved in any type of survey, and we've all probably taken surveys online from a merchant or wherever, customer satisfaction after the fact, is you see the responses drop off as the respondent goes further and further into the survey. The first few questions, like all 1,000 people responded, but then it just starts to diminish after that because they get bored. So we tried to focus on the most important dimensions without boring the respondent and adding too much into the mix. As far as trends go, everything's been pretty consistent over the years.
No. And actually, Commissioner Feruzin had mentioned, just in terms of the percentage of limited speaking households, for the broader survey, and you had also mentioned that, older respondents are more likely to use Facebook, and when younger respondents are more likely to use Instagram, which is understandable. Are there any kind of demo breakdowns that we should expect in the larger survey in terms of how they responded to different questions, or is that something that we could kind of have a follow-up for, even if that's something that the commission looks into?
Yeah, the cross-tabulation and cross-reporting was limited to breaking down quality of life and crime concerns by zip code. If we really wanted to, we could break down each question and cross-tabulate with any other question in the survey, so we could find out, what crime concerns were just based on people who responded who identified themselves as female. For the purpose of simplicity for the reader, we kept it, by just doing the breakdown by zip code when it came to quality of life and crime concerns. For the outreach, we kept it as the blanket, response to show what the majority voted and how they responded. But if you wanted to have that information, yes. Your question is, could we go in and cross-tabulate and identify which age groups responded to what social media platform? Yes, we could.
Awesome. I think that's something that we can take offline, but that's awesome to hear. And then in terms, I know you mentioned, and it totally makes sense to keep the language of the survey consistent over time, so you actually have, consistency in confidence in outcome. But I guess, is there kind of any intention, or has there been a process of continuously kind of just reviewing the flow and language of the survey every 2 years that it's run? And, how is the language kind of formalized and evolves? And is there an opportunity for commissioners to engage on that front as well? Because I know our commission kind of has several people on it, myself included, who have personally run surveys as well. So would love to get involved on that front.
Yeah, we're certainly open to input as far as ideas for new dimensions, or maybe new language, or reworking some of the dimensions we have. The questions that we have here are taken from a sampling of several law enforcement surveys that I and a few others researched and found, and we kind of picked our favorites, and we kind of picked those that we were able to custom tailor to Burbank, and those that were kind of most important to what our priorities and our goals are here at the police department, and that align with our values and mission. So, but certainly in the future, we would be open to input from not just the commission, but perhaps a dialogue with community members in identifying some of the things that they'd like to measure and work that in.
That is great to hear. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Green.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Lieutenant, I have a couple of short questions. You mentioned that it was an outside company that had hosted it. Is that a company that does that service for other departments in the city?
No, so the company, well, perhaps, not in Burbank, though. The company that we used is simply a survey hosting platform that we subscribe to for for the duration of the study. It allows us to go in and monitor the progress, monitor the responses, and then basically extract the data, and then we formulate it into a much more formal report. They provide you with a report as part of the service, but for the most part, it's like a print and click type report. It doesn't look very good. We wanted to make it more professional. So we extract the data, we download the data, and we incorporate that into a report. But the survey, there are several on the market. It's just it's an online platform. It requires no interaction with anyone. We set it up ourselves. We create the questions. We set the start date, end date. There are quite a few parameters that we can customize, and we've used the same platform now for the last 3, and it has worked very well.
Does the hosting company, are they responsible to send out information, whether it's on social media, newspapers, or postcards or something, to get people to participate?
No, the PR part of this, the getting people to respond and advertising the survey is completely on us, and we worked with the city PIO staff as well to get the word out. We had artwork made, we published it, we pushed it out electronically, distribution lists, you name it. Our response rate has been pretty consistent since 2017. We always meet the 1,000 threshold and maybe just a little bit more. We would love to get more. But we do typically receive about 1,000 to 1,100 responses.
Curious, do you have any idea what the survey cost the city?
It was the subscription that we paid for was $29.99 a month, and I think we ran it for 3 months with an extra month on the back end to be able to go in and customize some of the reporting. We signed up for the Pro plan, which lets you go in and cross-tabulate that you don't get with the basic plan. So it's a very affordable means for what we accomplish with this. $100, it's not bad.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And after you get the full report and it's all prepared, how has our department responded to those reports? Has it been useful?
I would say so.
Because you're putting, besides it being reasonably priced as far as the cost to the city, our department is putting time and effort into it.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the questions in the study or the survey allows respondents to write comments to us, free form. And those comments are reviewed at length by our administration, the chief of police, the captains, and then they are also disseminated to any staff that might have interest in whether it's a concern, a complaint, a service complaint, whatever the case might be. The relevant staff reviews those to address any issues and concerns, if that makes sense. And I think this time around, let me see here, I think there were 494 comments submitted. So that's quite a bit to sort through. And each one of those was read by our administration.
It doesn't necessarily change policy, but changes more the interaction with the community.
Yeah, so this is an anonymous survey. So these comments are coming from we don't know who. And I don't think any of them, and I scanned quite a few. I didn't read them all because they were forwarded to our administration. But I would venture to say that I doubt many, if any, provided any personal contact information. And that's kind of our goal here, right? We want people to voluntarily submit responses without any concern that we want them to remain anonymous, which the survey is, and be able to speak their mind and speak the truth and provide honest feedback. And that's what these comments provided. And many of the comments were nothing more than a kudos to the police department, praising the work of the men and women of our department. Yeah, that's a little bit about the freeform comments.
All right. Good. Well, thank you very much, sir. I believe that's all the questions we have. We appreciate your presentation this evening.
Thank you very much.
Chief, did you want to make some comments there?
If I could, please, and good evening, Commissioners. Hope you're all doing well. First off, I want to thank Lieutenant Green and Lieutenant Lasacco. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into the preparation for this type of presentation, because it's not only for the Commission, but it's also for the community. So high praise for their professional presentation and their ability to answer all your questions. So a personal thank you, and I know that you all thanked them also. A couple of things that, okay, I want to make sure you get my hair in there. Just some updates. If Commission and public watched the January 25th City Council session, you would have known that the animal shelter will be transitioning to Parks and Recs July 1. So this has been a year-and-a-half journey with our staff and Parks and Recs, with oversight from the city manager as far as transitioning the animal shelter to Parks and Recs. There's a memo that is online available for the specific details, but we believe it's going to be a seamless transition, and high marks to our staff and Parks and Recs for making this happen. Commissioner Combs addressed it, and I'm pointing to you. I got to look the other way. As far as the homeless count that's going to be on February 22nd, we are encouraging folks to volunteer to help and count. Our Met team and a couple of other officers will also be participating. Some community events. We have Cookie with a Cop. I said Cookie with a Cop, and that's going to be February 23rd at Sliders. Leadership Burbank, we're a strong supporter of Leadership Burbank. We have at least one of our folks involved in every session. They're having their fundraiser at the YMCA on February 27th. For the future, Police and Fire Service Day is going to be Saturday, May 7th, and that will be at the Police and Fire Building downtown in the parking lot, and there is a lot of activities for the community members. If you have kids, it's great because there's a lot of interactive stuff on the police side, the fire side, and typically it's a great day. On March 10th, we're having coffee and donuts with the CHP. This is a collaboration at Ballers and Brew, and that'll be on February 10th. Sergeant Fecity, actually, Lieutenant Green talked about our press releases. I believe we do a really good job as far as kicking out information to the community directly. So information as far as updates, as far as what's going on, anything notable, and we had a very notable arrest over the weekend. High marks to our investigative personnel that really did a lot of investigative legwork that resulted in some arrests of individuals that probably are involved in a number of crimes, not only in Burbank, in Glendale, and in the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. And then what goes on with that is then preventative measures. So jugging, Brent, it was jugging. So the crime was jugging, so it's going to be a new word for all. And then Sergeant Fecity kicked out a press release on how to just be smart if you're going to do your banking, is pay attention to your surroundings so you know that folks aren't watching you. And if you do a withdrawal, make sure it's secure on your person and don't leave it in your car. Don't leave it in an envelope on the seat that says, "Take me." Okay? So we do that. I do want to comment on cameras. We, as a department, are a big proponent of folks who have cameras. I have cameras at my house, but I have it for a different reason. I have a horse that knows how to escape from the arena. And it's not uncommon that my phone will blow up because a horse got out. And she is a pistol, but it has great value. It has great value for you personally and professionally. So if you have the wherewithal to install cameras, it is a great asset, and it's going to not only help you, but it's going to help your neighbors. And the last thing, as far as driving and driving behavior, and this is going to be public, and I talked about it at What's Brewing in Burbank, is in March, April, and May, we are going to be able to present at the Burbank Unified School District as far as driving safety, driving behavior, and just being a good community member. So all of that is on the horizon. That is all good. So I will take questions, and if there's no questions, I'll be seated.
All righty. Thank you, Chief. Commissioner
questions.
Feruzzi. I'm sorry, I think we've got 2 or 3 here.
Got it.
A quick question. Just I missed the dates on the police fire and service day and the coffee and donuts date.
You got it. So Police and Fire Service Day is going to be Saturday, May 7th, 9 a.m. to 2, and it'll be at our facility in the back, and there's quite a transformation of the facility in the back, and it's a great day. You have young children, they're going to have a blast.
Yes, we've attended, with our children quite a few times actually. So.
And the other day, coffee and donuts, that is going to be March 10th. March 10th.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Coombs, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, just a comment. I was remiss in doing this last month. We were remiss in doing this last month, and I know you're not a big fan of praise and everything, Chief, but I wanted to congratulate you on your permanent appointment to the full chief position from the interim position. Just wanted to make sure that was out there, and really appreciate what you're doing and how you're really you're engaging us, you're engaging the community. Just appreciate and you're demonstrating some really strong leadership with the department. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, James. Thank you.
Good. And Commissioner Hakobian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. And Chief Albanese, thank you again for the lunch that we had last month. And also, if you were at What's Brewing in Burbank, I was there with my Burbank Chamber Board hat on, and the chief stole the show. He was comedic, he was funny, he really livened up the room, and it was fantastic to see him there. And also, thank you for Leadership Burbank in announcing the event, because I am a student of that class this year, and we really appreciate the Burbank PD support. And it's a wonderful cause. It's helping the veterans. So thank you again.
You got it. If I can comment on that, why don't you tell the community what you're doing, because it is really pulls the heartstrings. So it's a great effort, and maybe we can get garner some additional support.
Sure.
If we can keep it brief, please. It's not on the agenda. This is supposed to be announcements from the chief. So whatever you say needs to be brief. If you want more, we can agendize it.
Yeah, sorry, Gina.
Sure.
Sorry, Gina.
Oh, sure. I can just make it brief. Lieutenant Henry Gray had an idea. He's a part of the class for Leadership Burbank to help the veterans by helping them remodel the VFW kitchen. This idea was favored by the class, and it is a mission for us now that we've taken on to remodel their kitchen, and we're going to be doing fundraisers all throughout the community and try to support that. I hope that was brief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hakobian. Commissioner Elliman, did you have a question of the chief?
Yes, I did. With the animal control moving over to Parks and Rec, the vehicles that animal control drive right now, are they labeled at all with any police identification?
They are. Can I answer that, Gina?
Really, this is supposed to be the time for announcements.
Okay.
That is that's a big move. So if it's something that you are interested in hearing more about, the movement of the animal shelter to parks, I really suggest that we agendize it so we can actually have a good discussion, presentation, etc.
Understood.
Chief, is there a reference to the website or somewhere where they would have more information available?
Yes, there's if you go to the city website, and we can put it on our site as far as the memorandum, right? I can send it to you. Yeah, and we can send it, but it's on the city website, but we can send the memorandum that kind of addresses those questions as far as the movement from the police department to Parks and Recs, that process. And Sherry will do that. Okay?
Good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry,
Thank
Gina.
you, sir. And congratulations again. Our next point of business is the introduction of agenda items for future meetings. Currently, we have one item that is on the burner coming up. It's anti-bias, anti-racism training for officers. And I don't know, do we have is that for next, scheduled for our next meeting? Okay. Do we have any additional items? Commissioner Feruzin.
Thank you. I just want to say that, the conversation that I and two other commissioners had around, the pedestrian traffic safety and the data around that just led us to questions around, the department's data collection, management, and analysis more generally. So I would like to motion to ask Burbank, the department's records manager, Jennifer Moran, to join us again and just present on the data elements that are collected by the department as relates to criminal activity, arrests, moving violations, traffic stops, pedestrian safety, and officer activity, and then how are these various data sets used and analyzed together to help inform the priorities and strategies of the department. And I can send the language of this to Secretary Turner and Ms. Nakamura if that's helpful to include in the minutes.
Do we have a second to that motion? Second is by Commissioner Liu. And now we have discussion on that. Commissioner Hakobian, did you have a comment there?
No, I was just approving.
All right. I wonder if, Commissioner Feruzin, if you could restate that kind of succinctly. What specifically are we looking for our presentation?
Yes, so it would be around sort of detailing the data elements that the department collects relating to criminal activity, arrests, moving violations, traffic stops, pedestrian safety, and officer activity. And then secondly, how are those various data sets used and analyzed together to help inform the priorities and strategies of the department?
All right. Now, those types of details, I believe, are collected, but also reported out on a regular basis, and maybe I'm not sure if that would be something that our commission should immediately jump on, or if it's something that we should wait to see what kind of information comes in the data that we see. But let's hear from other commissioners. Commissioner Elman?
We had the presentation a couple of meetings ago, maybe the last one, where there's a new FBI system of collecting data. I would like to see, after that new system goes into effect, what the first data looks like that is being collected and shared with other departments.
All right, so that's...
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Feruzin has made a motion, which has been seconded by Commissioner Liu. It sounds like Commissioner Elman is actually bringing up a slightly different topic for potential agendization of future meeting. So my suggestion would be that you go ahead and call for a vote on the motion that's on the table, which was Commissioner Feruzin's motion, as seconded by Commissioner Liu, and then ask for additional agenda items, in which case you can then discuss Commissioner Elman's proposed agenda item. So you want to call for the vote now on the motion that's on the table.
All right. Before we go to a vote, I have more questions that I'd like to ask. Did you have a specific time frame when you would prefer this presentation?
I understand, as the chief mentioned, I do various presentations myself as part of my professional work, and I know that they take a lot of time and energy, and that folks at the department have a lot of other priorities as well going on. So it doesn't need to be next month, it would be helpful sometime in the next, say, 3 meetings, if that's feasible. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I guess I would, if possible, if the Chief Albanese would like to weigh in on whether that seems feasible or not.
All right, and you're looking specifically for, in your motion, you're looking for specific numbers of particular crimes?
No, not so much. More of a catalog or a listing of what all are the kind of data points being collected, and understanding that some of these are collected in different systems. And so I'm wondering, how are they used together and analyzed generally to support and inform the department's priorities and strategies, and where they're, So not reporting on statistics like number of arrests or number of moving violations, but what types of data are we collecting around those things? And how do we use all that data together? Because there is a little bit of data overload these days. So I'm just wondering how the department's handling that.
Commissioner Liu, you had a question about the motion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the way that I'm understanding it is it's not necessarily actually reporting out all of the data that has been received thus far. It's more about the process of collecting it, as well as how it is then synthesized and executed upon in terms of enforcing the BPD, of how, of potential impact and an approach for the department. So it's less about the actual numbers, because as you mentioned, Chair Chapman, those are available online. It's less about the actual numbers as much as it's about, as Commissioner Feruzin mentioned, a lot of number overload these days. So how are those numbers kind of like looked at in aggregate and reported out? That's my understanding of it. Commissioner Fruzen, let me know if that's not the case. But I think it's more a process and approach versus, a hard reporting out of all of the different facts and figures over time.
Commissioner Elliman?
I'm still slightly confused about the objective. I guess the simple question is, do you want to know the how or you want to know the what?
Great question. I would say both. So again, it's one piece is sort of a catalog or a list of what are the data points being collected, again, through the various systems relating to various things, right? There are arrest records, there are number of traffic stops conducted, or there are different things collected around, pedestrian traffic incidents, things like that, versus, or criminal activity, right? Folks are calling in or reporting crimes. That's a different universe of data than arrests being made relating to crimes, right? And I know that many of these things are tracked in maybe different systems potentially, and then the how are they then being used? And it could be helpful to have a little bit of the how is it collected. So as I mentioned, I did a ride along a few months ago, and that was really helpful to see firsthand how some of this data is collected. So that may be helpful. In terms of just having the whole commission be aware of, how the data is collected, but even more so, I'm just wondering about the what. So what is the breadth of data that is collected and managed by the department? And then how is it being used?
All right. Yeah. Commissioner Coombs, did you have your hand up there?
Yeah, no, I didn't have my hand up, but I'm supporting what the original motion was. It sounded like it was pretty clear. I don't know if you want to repeat that again, but it sounded pretty clear what you were asking for.
All right. Could you repeat it one more time for us,
Yeah,
Commissioner
I'm happy
Fruzen?
So the request is that the department's records manager, Jennifer Moran, or if there's a different appropriate staff member, that's fine, to join us again to present on the data elements collected by the department as relates to criminal activity, arrests, moving violations, traffic stops, pedestrian safety, and officer activity. And then how are all those various data sets used and analyzed together to inform the department's priorities and strategies and so on.
Certainly.
What is all the data, collected and available, and then how is that data used? Basically.
So this may be helpful. We do daily crime control meetings, literally every day, Monday through Friday. So when you talk about data points and information from the prior 24 hours, then on Wednesday we have our big crime control meeting where we look at a 7-day, 30-day look back. And I understand the process and the approach, and maybe the question could be couched as how do you do your crime analysis? And because typically there's a PowerPoint associated with that and some of the software systems that we use, because I don't think you really are looking at the numbers, but more of the process. And Jennifer Moran, and what I'm trying to do is help you out here, is that Jennifer Moran would not be part of that process. But there's a couple other folks that could be, that might be more informative or helpful.
Could we?
Like I said, if it would be someone else, at least on that how question, then that would be great. And I'm not sure who would be best placed to answer the what question. So I would defer to you on that, again, as well.
All right. So we have a slight adjustment to your motion, but I think it's everybody's understanding and an agreement there. Is there any more discussion, or can we take a vote now? All right. Those in favor of adding that to the agenda, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? No, we're all good. Good. Do we have any other points of business? Commissioner Elman.
Well, I'm going to try again and propose that we look at the future of the Burbank Police Department based on growth in the city, and that we look at it in terms of sizing and assignments.
Do we have a second for that?
Can I make a motion to amend? Or would that come after the acceptance of the agenda item?
Ms. O?
So one thing I want to say is we do not follow Robert's Rules of Order, right, by the book. So for me, what I look at when I look at your motions and how things are going, generally, if we can, we try, but we're not that strict. As long as what you're saying is clear and what you're voting on is clear, I am good with it. Legally, it is fine, okay? Because there's no mandate that we follow Robert's Rules of Order. No border commission in the city does. So if Mr. Elman is willing to let you make an amendment, then I think you can suggest the amendment and then we can go forward from there.
Commissioner Elman?
Yeah, there's just one thing that I forgot to mention, that in the city council has made this on the council goal list of looking at the services of all departments in the city, and the police department is one of the main departments. So the council is looking for the same thing as I think we should be looking at. Thank you.
I have we have a second from Mr. Coombs.
I was going to make a recommendation to expand it slightly because the council is looking at it. I was just going to make the recommendation that we don't just look in terms of budget and numbers, but we explore the future of community and local law enforcement needs 5 and 10 years into the future. That may actually go beyond the police department, but that would be partnering with the police department and to be able to get that information back from the department of what they see their needs are into the future. So it's including expansion and meeting the needs of the department and the department's numbers, but also looking at what partners they need in doing the work that they see needs to be done.
Commissioner Elman?
Yeah, I would say that would be included under what I call the heading of assignments, what these people are going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it.
All right. So we do have a second from Mr. Coombs with a little modification there. And Commissioner Elman seems good with that. Are there any, can we open this for discussion? Does anybody have any questions or?
Can I ask a question?
You certainly can, sir.
Mr. Elman, just so that I'm clear. So conceptually, you want to know what the department might look like 10 years from now, as far as staffing, as far as city needs, as far as technology. That's what you're looking at, because we're a little unclear, but conceptually, how do we see it today for the next 10 years?
I would like to say further into the future, and I'm not asking you to be Karnak the Magnificent, but in the city, we do have a 2035 plan, and I would say just high level, very high level, where do you see us going for 2035? And let's just say in the 2035 plan, there's a goal of 12,000 more units in the city. What would that entail for your group with something like that? So I'm not saying it's hard and fast. Just put on your crystal ball a little.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful for us in preparing.
Good. there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Then let's go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor? Raise your hand and say aye. Yeah. Oppose? Okay. Good. I think we're in good shape there.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that the police department understands this is not necessarily for the next meeting. This type of report will take some time and analysis, and so I want to make sure we give the police department staff ample and adequate time to do that. So it will be brought back at a future meeting, not necessarily the next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. So we do have something on our agenda now for the next meeting already. Commissioner Hakobian?
I would like to introduce an agenda item. And this is to thank you to Chief Albanese for the update and Gina giving me this idea to agendize the Parks and Rec. I guess I would say there. How would you word that? Is there like they're going to be taking over the animal shelter? Is that correct? Is that what's happening?
The transition from police department to Parks and Recs.
Yeah, and what that means to PD and what that's looked like in the past, because I mean, being a new police commissioner, I have no idea what that looked like. And just a brief presentation about that. There's no sense of urgency on that, so anytime.
I would like to second that if it's okay. Commissioner Feruzin?
Yeah, just a question of clarification. So you're asking for just a brief presentation from the department around what that transition away from the department looks like. Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? In my past on the commission here, there was some discussion about the animal shelter, and it was a very popular subject. And I think that that was an excellent idea, Commissioner Hakobian. I think there's interest there. Okay. Those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we're in good shape then. Now, just to be clear, that is not with a specific date either, but in the near future.
That's correct.
Whenever it works out with them. Yeah. Commissioner Combs.
Thank you. I actually have a couple of items, but I'll take them one at a time. We'll go from there. The first is that we are now, our commission, as it's comprised, is now 6 months in to the work that we're doing. And I know that it's been a steep learning curve for a lot of us, myself included. And in the work that I do during the day, we usually do some sort of probationary evaluation after a 6-month period. I was wondering if at some point, doesn't necessarily have to be the next meeting, but if we could agendize an item for us as the commission to do some self-reflection, similar to what Lieutenant Green had talked about with the department. And would it be possible for us to hold a discussion on the function and process of our commission and whether we're meeting our goals, areas that we need to stretch in, areas we may need to consider for our organization and functioning as a commission?
Do we have a second there? Commissioner Feruzin? Has a second. Okay, doke. Any discussion?
So, Commissioner Combs, just to make sure that we are clear, this would be, there's no report or any presentation associated beyond what the commission is going to discuss amongst yourselves, obviously with our larger audience. Is that correct?
Correct. No report provided by the department, but this may create an opportunity for the public to call in it would also create an opportunity for department leadership to provide some feedback as well.
Commissioner Elman?
Well, I think it's a good idea, but I'm hesitant in the sense of one of the things that you mentioned is, are we meeting our goals? Well, I would like to know, when did we set goals?
Exactly.
One of the things that I've always believed as being a commission member is at the beginning of the year, the commission should have a meeting to set goals for that year. And I think there should be a meeting at the end of the year to say if we met our goals. That's another thing is, for my time, 30 years in a major corporation, how do you measure success? That's one of the hardest questions. So I think we need a meeting, and I think you're on the right, going in the right direction, but I would like to see it as a meeting, first goal setting, and also setting up metrics of how to measure success.
Is there any other comments or suggestions?
I guess just speaking to the goal setting, I'm wondering if it would make sense to have, maybe two commissioners before that meeting, sort of draft maybe some goals or something like that, just as a starting point for that discussion, maybe. Just a suggestion.
Commissioner Elman?
I would love to see the public involved in it. Maybe they should help us set our goals.
Commissioner Liu?
I think just hearing the back and forth, potentially there may be an opportunity to amend this agenda item in that we can first hold a meeting on goal setting with the intention of getting input from the public, and then set a follow-up agenda item, potentially 6 months into the future, to then assess progress against those goals. Would that kind of, it seems like we're all aligned on kind of the ultimate end goal here, but just kind of thinking through process and kind of priorities in achieving that.
Yeah, speaking to that and Commissioner Elman's comment around public input, if a few commissioners were to draft something in advance, and through that process they could do outreach on a personal level, would there be a way to somehow share that draft or some of those ideas before the meeting, so that when folks call in, they would have known what those things are, because the public comment is before we would have our discussion as a commission? Or would folks just need to be calling in just with their ideas without having something to react to, right? Drafts. I'm just wondering, process-wise, if there's a way to facilitate the public having a chance to maybe preview that versus just calling in from scratch with their thoughts.
Commissioner Coombs?
Sure. I'm thinking about, I saw Commissioner Elman's hand was up as well. If I could respond very quickly, though. I think as many of you have identified, we didn't start out, as Commissioner Elman said, we did not start out setting goals in the first place. So I'm seeing a public discussion amongst ourselves with feedback, with input from the public during the call-in period to have this discussion about the importance of making sure that we set that structure in place. And we may want to have a formal kickoff as far as goal setting for the year and evaluation for the year, doing a July through June or a July through May process cycle that we may want to use. So I don't necessarily feel the need to do any advanced work on this as much as I feel the need that we have the conversation. And I realize that we can't have the conversation unless we agendize it.
So,
Commissioner Elman?
I was just going to say, I think we need to hear from the Assistant City Attorney in terms of us talking before something happens and the public input?
Thank you, Commissioner Elman. So from what I'm hearing, to try to marry these different ideas, what I would suggest is advertising, right? We want to get the word out that we want public participation in setting these goals for our police commission. So to the extent that we can advertise it on our city website, on the police department website, that this is an agenda item that's going to come up. And I suggest we pick a date certain so that we can advertise it and people know exactly when to call in to participate in this. That would be my suggestion. I think we need to, the most impactful thing would be to advertise it as much as possible to get that public input. And you are correct, you do not set different goals, but you do have a mandate in the charter and in the BMC, in the Burbank Municipal Code, as to what your responsibilities are. And so that does provide some framework of what you're supposed to be doing. And so there is some basis for the public to, read those responsibilities and then make a determination so that they can communicate with you at a future meeting about how they think you're doing, and then go from there in terms of setting additional goals that you may want to set for yourselves.
Commissioner Coombs, is it possible that we might want to do this is perhaps have 2 or 3 members of our committee kind of come together and solidify a plan and then present that as a motion at a future meeting? And that way we're instead of going all over the place, we're kind of getting more specific as to what we're looking at. Would that work with you?
That seems reasonable.
All right. And Commissioner Elman, that works with you too? Good. All right. Then can I suggest this? We don't have a motion, we don't have a vote or a second motion, but we do have an ad hoc committee that's coming up. Could Commissioner Coombs, could you maybe pick out 2 other people that you could work with and come up with something that could be presented in the future?
I would be happy to work with anyone here.
Excellent. All right. Do we have any volunteers?
Yeah, volunteers. And there was actually a motion on the table. So for cleanup purposes, even though we don't follow Robert's rules as much as we can, keep it neat. The Commissioner Coombs, I assume you're withdrawing your original motion. And
that is correct.
Okay, so, and you want to create a subcommittee to explore this idea of getting feedback and setting goals.
Correct, and evaluating the performance of the police commission.
So right now, what you're doing is creating a subcommittee, Mr. Chair, and I would suggest you ask for volunteers.
All right. And do we have any volunteers? Commissioner Hakobian? Commissioner Coombs? Is the 2 of you enough? Yeah.
We'll take what we can get.
Okay. All right. That sounds excellent. And then you can report back to the commission when you're ready. All right.
Appreciate that.
Good.
And I do have a second motion that I'd like to make for an agenda item. If that'd be okay?
Sure.
Great. So this is one of the things that I think has driven a lot of us to get involved in this work in the first place is looking at the national narrative and looking at what we're doing in Burbank. And I just want to lift up and acknowledge that we had a couple of incidents that have come up just over the past couple of weeks that are really reflective of some of the things that we've seen in national narrative policing across the country. And I'd like to believe that we don't do things the same way here. It would be good to hear from the department. Specifically, the two black men were killed recently as a result of no-knock warrants. One of them was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and another one was in Las Vegas, Nevada, just in the past couple of weeks. And one of the things that I would like to hear from the department is, does the Burbank Police Department engage in the practice of no-knock warrants? And if not, what are the how do I put this succinctly?
Options.
What is it that our department does to prevent adversely impacting the community and putting people at risk as a result of no-knock warrants?
Would that, excuse me for interjecting, would that be just a use of force?
No, actually, I understand exactly what Commissioner Coombs is asking, is that how do we manage high-risk warrants? And from the service of high-risk warrants, from the beginning to the service of the warrant, define what the criteria of a high-risk warrant, nighttime service, no-knock, how does that process look? I believe that's what you're asking, right? And that
is correct.
That is something that we can provide to the commission and to the community.
All right. I don't know if that needs to be restated. I think we're in good shape there. Do we have a second? Commissioner Hakobian. Seconds? Any discussion? I think this would be pretty darn interesting. Yeah, that'd be great. Commissioner Ellman?
You're still muted, Mike.
Turn your mic on, Mr. Ellman.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah. Spacebar wasn't doing its thing. Anyway, I would just say that a lot of that discussion did take place during the Nicole conference. And a lot of the seminars were about that. And I think that, it just shows the importance of, attending those seminars, because it really does talk about the national narrative.
Right. Any other comments, questions? Then can we take Then can we take a vote? Those in favor in adding that to the agenda? Say aye. Good.
Aye.
That seemed to pass. I'm going to ask Ms. Nakamura if we could add onto our agenda a list of future items so that that's readily available on each agenda so we know where we're at and what potentially is coming up. Great. Good. Then I think that we're done. Commissioner Ellman?
I think maybe we should spend a little time in one of the meetings to really work on our future agendas and really set a goal of what we want to accomplish in terms of agendas. Just about way off in the future.
Is there a motion there?
No, just a comment.
All right. Good. Good. Well, thank you, Commissioner Ellman. Then I think that wraps up our evening here. Our next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. We're adjourned.